We'll continue with number 28. Again, we have a square root function, y equals -2 x minus 3 to the 1/2. In order to determine a, h, and k, we compare. We get a equals -2, h equals 3, and k equals 0. Notice for the h value, you always take the opposite of what you see under the radical or in the parentheses. The reason that you take the opposite is because of the negative in the equation. If you're putting this in your calculator just to check your work or help yourself out, make sure that if you're using the radical, that you put parentheses around what's supposed to be under the radical so that the calculator can distinguish between an h value and a k value. Let's try to get a data table, and let's try to go ahead and graph. Notice that our endpoint is going to be at hk, so at 3, 0. Less than 3, for instance, a value of 2, is going to give us an error in our calculator because 2 minus 3 would be -1, and we can't take the square root of a negative. So we can pick one value after 3 because we know we can take the square root of 1. So 4 minus 3 is 1, square root of 1 is 1, times -2 is -2. The next number that we can easily take the square root of is 4. So we want x minus 3 to be equal to 4. If that's true, x is going to have to be 7. 7 minus 3 is 4. The square root of 4 is 2. Times -2 is -4. This gives us enough values now to graph. We have our endpoint at 3, 0. We have another point at 4, -2, and yet another point at 7, -4. Notice we started our endpoint. This time our graph is going down. It's still going to be a nice smooth curve through our points, continuing downward with an arrow. Now let's talk about domain and range. Remember, we always write domain and range. We're using interval notation, although you can use inequality notation. We're starting always from least to greatest. So in this case, our lowest x, or our furthest left value, is 3. It is included, so we get a square bracket, and it's going to infinity to the right. Our range would be our lowest value up to our highest value. In this case, because it's going forever downward, our lowest value is -infinity, and our highest value is 0. It is closed at 0. In terms of transformations, we have to explain an a equal to -2 and an h equal to 3. Remember, an a equal to -2 actually has two separate effects. The first one would be the effect of the negative, and that negative makes our graph reflect, or flip if you'd like, across the x-axis. The 2 causes a stretch. Anytime you multiply by something greater than 1, it gets bigger. So in this case, we get a stretch vertically by a factor of 2. an h of 3, notice that h is in the parentheses with the x, so it affects the x directly. So that means it shifts things left and right. Because it is a positive 3, that is a shift right 3 units. Notice it does not shift in the k direction or up and down.